Coming up on Arirang News, the South Korean government announces more debt relief for small business. Those struggling to pay their loans will get another 6-month extension on their payments and a chance to repay them over a longer period of time. North Korea releases pictures of yesterday's ballistic missile test launch, showing that the missiles were actually launched from a train. It was a drill for a new missile regiment the North has set up earlier this year. And with the Chuseok holiday starting this weekend in Korea and millions of people likely to travel, the government is urging people to limit the size of their family gatherings to keep the coronavirus from spreading throughout the country. It's 5 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us on Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting. The South Korean government has announced another measure to help small business owners stay afloat until the economy is fully moving again. The Finance Ministry says it's extending the due date for loans to small businesses for another 6 months, and those loans will be restructured so they're payable over a longer period of time. Ji-young reports.
South Korea is to extend the maturity on government loans for small businesses and mom-and-pop stores. Finance Minister Hong Nam-gi announced at an emergency economic meeting on Thursday that he'll defer the principal repayments for small firms for 6 months until next March. He said this extension of the due date is for loans borrowed from government institutions, including the Korea SMEs and Startups Agency and Small Enterprise and Market Service. This is on top of the debt relief measures provided through banks and other financial institutions, which were announced on Wednesday by the Financial Services Commission.
Debt relief measures for small businesses, which were first introduced in April 2020 and have been extended twice, were set to end this September, but we will extend this for another 6 months to next March. We take this time to thank the financial institutions that have actively participated in this.
The government also plans to support borrowers by coming up with a long-term repayment plan and adjusting principal and interest payments for those struggling to repay their loans.
As small businesses are going through difficulties, extending debt relief measures would be supportive. But methods that can lead to an increase in revenue for those businesses would be more helpful, including providing emergency relief funds.
And the ministry said it'll expand funds for unsecured loans for small travel agencies who are hit especially hard by the pandemic. It'll be increased from the current $43 million to $85 million next year. To boost consumer spending, the ministry said it would expand its cashback scheme on credit card payments so that consumers can also get cashback for online purchases. The system gives consumers up to 100,000 won or about $85 cashback per month if they spend at least 3% more on their credit cards than their average monthly consumption in the second half of last year. This is to start from October, and the ministry is to provide details after the Chuseok holiday. Ji-young, Arirang News.
South Korea is preparing to celebrate the Thanksgiving holiday of Chuseok starting this weekend, and that usually means spending a lot of money on food. More each year, it seems. The government's taken measures to stabilize prices, but experts say prices could be pushed up by the extra money people have from the latest round of pandemic relief funds. Seo In-kyung reports.
The cost of purchasing food for the Chuseok memorial rituals, known as chare, have increased again this year.
Foods were expensive last year during the Chuseok holiday, but it feels like things have become more expensive this year, especially fruit.
South Korea's consumer prices in August exceeded the Bank of Korea's inflation target of 2% for the 5th consecutive month, and the data from the Seoul Agro-Fisheries and Food Corporation at end of August show the prices for preparing chare tables for Chuseok increased by 5 to 6% on year. Responding to this, the government has implemented measures to balance supply and demand, starting in the last week of August, a week earlier than last year.
To stabilize prices of Chuseok foods, the government has been increasing supplies, as well as providing price cuts through discount events to help those prepare chare tables.
Starting from August 30th, the government has been increasing the supply of the 10 most in-demand chare table items, such as apples and eggs, by 1.5 times the normal supply and 1.4 times compared to the Chuseok holiday last year. In addition, the government is spending $1.3 billion to subsidize up to 30% discounts on agricultural and livestock products.
In fact, apart from cabbage, the 10 most in-demand food items have all seen their prices fall between August 30th and September 10th. However, experts say that Korea's fifth round of COVID-19 emergency relief funds in September could raise prices over the Chuseok holiday.
Korea's consumer prices have been on the rise, especially since May this year. The recent COVID-19 relief funds do not cause inflation, but could accelerate the rising trend that has been here in Korea over the few months by leading people to buy more foods for chattae tables.
Despite the rising prices, the use of relief funds means that chattae tables are still likely to be full this year. 서은경, Arirang News.
One trend that's been accelerated by the pandemic is the move to stores that have no cashiers and no queues. You don't have to interact with anyone at all. Just check into the store with a card and walk out with your shopping. Our Min Soo-kyun explains.
There's no cashier at this checkout-free store. To shop, you must either download a store app or register your credit or debit card at the kiosk machine. Then scan the QR code you received on your phone at the entrance gate. Now, feel free to grab the items you want and just leave.
I've just bought a few items and I'm now going to walk out of the store. As you can see, a digital receipt appears on my phone showing the items bought and the total amount charged.
This so-called just walk out shopping employs several advanced technologies such as computer vision, sensor fusion, and deep learning. The store has 21 cameras to detect the movements of customers, while high-tech sensors keep track of the items taken or returned to the shelves. And a virtual assistant is at hand to guide you while you shop.
마스크 어딨어? 마스크 상품은 화면에 표시되는 선반에서 찾으실 수 있어요.
Customers find it easy to shop at the no-cashier store as they don't have to queue at checkouts.
It's really convenient. It's nice to buy things quickly and leave. I feel like there might be more people at lunchtime, but since there are no cashiers, I think it's convenient to shop.
The pandemic has accelerated touch-free transactions as shoppers prefer to use remote payment options. The added benefit of checkout-free stores is that people can avoid physical contact as there is no need to pass payment cards back and forth. And this has led more stores to experiment with cashier-free shopping.
With COVID-19, contactless services have become quite familiar to users and are in demand. Also, considering the rising labor costs and technological advances, setting up a checkout-free store has become relatively less costly than before.
The concept of an automated grocery store is not new. It was first introduced in the US by Amazon in late 2016, and now Amazon has around 30 automated stores around the world. Other countries, including the UK and China, are also rolling out checkout-free stores, reshaping the retail industry. Min Soo-kyun, Arirang News.
Korean beauty products and trends have gained global recognition for their innovative techniques and high quality. Now the city of Seoul is going a step further and aims to make the Korean capital a beauty mecca. City officials said Wednesday that they're going to help grow Seoul's beauty industry by opening flagship stores around the city and establishing tourist routes and packages for lovers of cosmetics. It recently held a conference on rebranding the city as a beauty hub where it collected ideas from influencers and experts. The conference will be shown on the Seoul YouTube channel in about half an hour from now, starting at around 5:45 p.m. Korea time. Time now for an in-depth look at the market news this afternoon, and for that I'm joined on the line by Dr. Kim Se-won, Professor of Economics at Ewha Women's University. Professor Kim, good afternoon. Thanks for coming on today.
Good afternoon, Devin.
Well, a major story this week is in China, the difficulties of the Chinese real estate giant Evergrande, which faces possible default, something that would have ripple effects throughout the financial system globally. The company's having trouble finding buyers for assets that it could sell to service its debts worth hundreds of billions of dollars. Evergrande bonds have now stopped trading. Tell us about the situation at Evergrande, or Hengda as it was called before, and what the implications might be.
Evergrande is one of the largest Chinese real estate developers, but it is suffering from unmanageable size of debt, which amounts to 1.9 trillion yuan or $305 billion. On Tuesday, Evergrande's stock price dropped by 12% in Hong Kong market over rumors that Beijing has decided to let Evergrande to bankrupt. The firm's shares have fallen by more than 80% in the last 6 months. Evergrande said its cash flow is under tremendous pressure. So it is expected that the company's debt problem could pose widespread risk to the financial system of Chinese economy and global economy too. Evergrande's debt in the form of bonds particularly have been both domestically and globally sold to Chinese citizens and major international investment firms like BlackRock, UBS, Amundi. They're all big names in the market. So Evergrande's financial problem can trigger another shock to global financial market, not to mention Chinese financial market.
Indeed, and sticking with real estate for a moment, home prices have been rising, of course, at a record pace all around the world, twice as fast actually in developed countries as in developing countries. A couple of exceptions would be India and Spain. But tell us about this trend, why it's so broad, and what you make of the situation.
Global housing market is heating up with the highest increasing rate in 2 decades. Two main factors for this rise are the lowest interest rate and extra savings over coronavirus pandemic. At the same time, the risk over the real estate market threat global financial market stability. According to Financial Times from UK, housing price in 55 countries increased by 9.2% on year as of June. As you said, Devin, particularly developed countries' housing price increasing rates more than doubled that of developing countries. In U.S., Australia, New Zealand, and Canada, housing price increase rate exceeded 16% on annual basis. One thing very interesting to housing price increasing is that the coronavirus pandemic has generated stronger demand on house related to working at home and social distancing. And it is actually further fueled government's cash out programs and increased household savings.
Right, and Professor, turning to the stock markets, Wall Street saw a bounce back overnight. Last week was rough for U.S. stocks, but Wednesday's gains were led by energy shares as oil prices rose. Looking forward to U.S. retail sales tomorrow. What's the story in the global equity markets?
U.S. stock rose Wednesday, constructing a rebound as investors tried to assess the strength of the U.S. economic recovery. Dow Jones Industrial Average advanced by 0.7%, and the tech-focused NASDAQ Composite climbed by 0.8%. Stocks have retreated this month, with some investors worried that markets are matured for a pullback after marching higher for much of this year. So it should be more watched whether market continues to go up after Wednesday's advancement. Energy was the best performing sector on Wednesday, boosted by oil rally. For example, Chevron share gained by 2.1% on Wednesday. All European markets dropped on Wednesday, mainly due to much higher than expected inflation in the region. Also, Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index dropped by 1.6% related to the possible bankruptcy of Evergrande today.
Yeah, a lot of talk about that September slowdown. We'll have to see if that materializes or not. Korean stocks were down today, though. Retail investors buying, institutions and foreigners selling. Shares of Naver and Kakao hit hard in the past few days. They seem to have stopped the bleeding for now. Tell us about the domestic market.
Domestic market turned to decline after 4 straight days rise. Kospi had negative 0.7% return, and Kosdaq also had negative 0.3% return today. Without dominant factors in the market today, there were huge sales by both of the institutional investors and foreign investors. Particularly, domestic institutional investors like asset management companies, insurance companies, and securities companies led Kospi markets decline with 513 billion won net sales. Domestic institutional investors also further accelerated Kosdaq markets decline with 73 billion won net sales.
And finally, Professor, if we could look at the jobs numbers that came out yesterday in Korea. Last month, we see there were more than 500,000 more people employed compared to last August. Still declines in some areas, though, like the hard-hit in-person services and manufacturing sectors. What do you see in this data, Professor?
Korean economy added jobs for 6 straight months in August, but the growth rate pace slowed as employment in service sector was hit by the fourth wave of pandemic. According to Statistics Korea, the number of employed people reached 27.6 million last month, which is 518,000 more than a year earlier. The August job additions were lower than on-year increase of 542,000 the previous month. But job growth slowed for the 4 straight months in August as the latest in COVID-19 cases and tougher than ever virus curve dealt a blow to employment in the face-to-face service employment. As you said, service sector reported severe job erosion in August amid the toughest distancing roles. For example, the wholesale and retail sector reported fall of 113,000 jobs in August. The manufacturing sector, a backbone of Korean's economy, reported an on-year fall of 76,000 jobs last month.
All right, Professor, we'll have to leave it there for today. Thanks for sharing your insights with us as always. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
North Korea has released photographs of the ballistic missiles it fired into the East Sea yesterday. It turns out they were launched from a train, and the launch was a drill for a new missile regiment formed by the North in January. Kim Ji-yeon reports.
North Korea confirmed the ballistic missiles it fired on Wednesday were launched from a train. The North state-run Korean Central News Agency reported Thursday that the regime's railway-borne missile regiment handled the drill. Their mission was to strike a target area 800 kilometers away from their location after moving to the central mountainous area in the early hours of the morning. It reported that a member of the presidium of the Politburo of the ruling Workers' Party, Park Jong-chun, was in charge of the regiment's training and personally oversaw the launch. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un wasn't there. As part of North Korea's comprehensive 5-year weapons and science development program, the railway-borne missile regiment was established after it was first mentioned at the 8th ruling Workers' Party Congress in January. It's aimed at enhancing North Korea's ability to prepare against simultaneous external threats. The report said it was the first time the railway-borne missile system was used for combat training to confirm its practical use. Via photos released by the North, the missiles are confirmed to be a modified version of the KN-23 Iskander-class ballistic missile that was fired on March 25th. Such Iskander-class ballistic missiles are harder to intercept than other missiles due to their so-called pull-up maneuver, the ability to shoot upwards dramatically during the final stages of descent, making it harder to predict their flight trajectory. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff said the missiles were fired at 12:34 and 12:39 p.m. Korea time from Yangdo, Pyeongan-namdo Province. The missiles flew around 800 kilometers, reaching an altitude of some 60 kilometers. They were fired just 2 days after North Korea reported its launching of long-range cruise missiles into the East Sea.
There was no special movement in North Korea to elaborate on so far. South Korea and the US are working closely together on analysing the short-range ballistic missiles fired on Wednesday, including the missile type and specific features. South Korean military believe North Korea continues to develop various missiles transport erector systems.
The series of launches are speculated to be part of a plan to help the regime gain the upper hand in future negotiations with the U.S. or South Korea. Wednesday's missile launch was the fifth provocation by North Korea so far this year. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
The launch on Wednesday prompted the UN to call an emergency meeting, and reports say there was a consensus there that the launch was a threat to international peace and security and a clear violation of UN Security Council resolutions. Han Sung-woo reports.
The United Nations Security Council has decided to hold an emergency meeting Wednesday on the situation on the Korean Peninsula, where both South and North Korea have recently carried out ballistic missile tests. A diplomatic source told AFP that the meeting was requested by France and Estonia and will be held informally behind closed doors. This comes after the UN expressed deep concern over the latest missile launches by North Korea.
We're very much aware of the media reports and are concerned by the latest developments that we've seen. As we've said before, diplomatic engagement remains the only pathway to sustainable peace and complete verifiable denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula.
According to South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff, the isolated regime fired 2 short-range ballistic missiles into the East Sea on Wednesday local time after testing a new cruise missile over the weekend. The United States has condemned the launch, calling the act a violation of Security Council resolutions that poses a threat to its neighbors and the international community. A State Department official said, however, the country remains committed to dialogue with the North.
We have no hostile intent towards the DPRK. We've been very clear about that. What we seek to do is to reduce the threat to the United States, to our allies in the region, and that includes the ROK and Japan. And we think we can do that through diplomacy.
Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga, meanwhile, has denounced the launch as, quote, simply outrageous and a threat to the peace and security of the region. Han Sung-woo, Arirang News.
South Korea's Unification Ministries reiterated that it's going to continue working to expedite talks with North Korea despite the regime's missile launches in the past week and a denunciation of President Moon by the North Korean leader's sister, Kim Yo-jong. A Unification Ministry official urged Pyongyang to return to talks, saying dialogue and cooperation are the path to complete denuclearization. The official also said the ministry will continue its efforts to manage affairs on the peninsula in a stable way. Regarding the statement from Kim Yo-jong, the official stressed that basic manners and respect should be adhered to in any case. This was the first time a statement from Kim has mentioned the South Korean president directly. The source said those remarks do nothing to promote peace. And the latest on the coronavirus in South Korea, there was a little under 2,000 cases today, a slight decline, but the rate of infection in Seoul and the surrounding area is 3 times higher than that of the rest of the country, which is a concern. Millions of people are getting ready to travel throughout the country this weekend for the Chuseok holiday. Lee Kyung-eun reports.
As South Korea prepares for the major Chuseok holiday, the country reported 1,943 cases on Thursday. It's a slight decline from the day before when the figure topped the 2,000 mark. But there are growing concerns as the outbreak is currently centered on the densely populated capital area. Seoul and the surrounding areas took up a staggering 78% of Thursday's infections. Seoul alone reported more than 700 cases. According to a health official, that puts the infection rate in the capital region at about 3 times higher than in the rest of the country. For every 100,000 people, the capital region sees about 5.1 cases, compared to 1.6 infections for the rest of the country. And this comes despite the fact the toughest restrictions are in place for the capital region. Vaccines are not likely to be a game changer at this very stage. Authorities say at least 70% of the population should be fully vaccinated for the country to see a notable decline in cases, which is expected to be around late October or early November. They're also worried that the current vaccine effects could be defeated by the increased movements during the upcoming Chuseok holiday that starts this weekend. While advising people to stay at home, they urge them to make family gatherings as small and short as possible.
Usually, when a gathering lasts 12 hours, the risk of infection goes up to 60%. But if the duration is reduced to 4 hours, the risk of infection decreases to 35%.
The government is allowing up to 8 people to gather during the holiday as long as 4 of them are fully vaccinated. Young-eun, Arirang News.
And South Korea's southern resort island of Jeju is strongly recommending visitors to get tested before they come in the next few days. Some 200,000 people are expected on Jeju from this Friday until next Wednesday. The island will be implementing special disease prevention measures until later this month. Anyone going to Jeju with a fever can get a COVID test at a walk-through screening center at Jeju Airport. The island will be under the strictest level of distancing until the end of the holiday. And that does it for this newscast. Thank you for watching.